Think serial killers are all wild-eyed lunatics? Think again. These guys were smarter than your high school valedictorian. Except they used their brains for body counts, not book clubs. From chess-playing cannibals to criminal masterminds who made the FBI look like interns. Welcome to the Twisted Genius League of Death. H. Holmes, the devil in the White City. What do you get when you mix charm, architecture, and absolute godless depravity? You get H. Holmes, a man who didn't just kill, he built a goddamn murder hotel. Not an inn, not a house, a freaking 3-story labyrinth of lies, hidden rooms, acid pits, gas chambers, and soundproof vaults in 1890s Chicago. The man literally invented a murder factory before anyone thought serial killer was a job title. Holmes wasn't content with stabbing. Oh no, he designed death like an artist lost in fever dreams. He would lure young women, often his employees, into his castle, seduce them, promise them futures, and then vanish them like a magician sawing reality in half. And the best part? He almost got away with it all. He insured his victims' lives, lied better than politicians on painkillers, and forged documents like his pen was dipped in Satan's blood. He even faked his own death once. And if that wasn't enough, he confessed to 27 murders, but may have killed over 200. No one knows. He lied compulsively, lied like he breathed, lied like lying was a religion, and he was the Pope of the abyss. This man was not a butcher. He was a horror novelist with blueprints. He died hanging, neck snapped like a poorly written character arc. But his murder castle? It's a metaphor for what happens when genius decays into rot. Rodney Alcala, the dating game killer. Oh, you like true crime and irony? Buckle the hell up. Rodney Alcala was a photographer, and a game show contestant, and a child predator, and a genius with an IQ of 170 who somehow used his intelligence not to solve anything but to outwit death over and over. Picture this. He strangles a girl, brings her back to consciousness, strangles her again. 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 Like he's playing music on a human instrument. He photographs them, catalogues them, creates a photo album of smiling corpses in waiting. There were over 1,000 of his photographs, most never identified. Some are still circulating in FBI databases. Souvenirs. Proof. Art, if you've got the soul of a vulture. But here's the part that screams cosmic madness. In 1978, after killing at least 4 people, Rodney Alcala goes on national television. The dating game. He literally wins the episode, charms the pants off the audience while hiding the scent of decomposing dreams. And the woman who picked him? She later said something felt off. No shit, Sherlock. He represented himself in court like a deranged theater kid doing Shakespeare on acid. Cross-examined himself, spoke in third person, smirked like a cartoon villain, and still it took decades to finally lock him up with death row's finest. Smart? Yes, dangerously so. He weaponized charisma. He mocked justice. He lived between dimensions, part man, part void. Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber. He wasn't a killer for thrills. He was an academic vigilante with blood on his thesis. Harvard at 16. Math prodigy. PhD from Michigan. Could have had any tenured life of sipping tea and torturing undergrads with proofs. Instead, he moved to a shack in Montana, became one with the squirrels, and declared war on modernity. And he didn't just bomb people. He philosophized about it. Industrial society and its future is 35,000 words of rage and logic terrifying because some of it actually makes sense. His manifesto wasn't just a rant, it was an autopsy of the human condition, penned by a man too self-aware for his own sanity. He built bombs like poems complex, meticulous, disguised in innocence. No two were the same. He studied metallurgy, electronics, forensics. The FBI called him a ghost. They had a task force larger than some countries' armies. He evaded them for nearly 2 decades. Here's the kicker. He was caught because of grammar. Freaking grammar. His brother read the manifesto and thought, this sounds like Ted at Thanksgiving. And that was it. A literary fingerprint. Ted didn't kill because he liked it. He did it because he thought he had to. Because progress to him was rot wrapped in silicon. He was the prophet of collapse. Brilliant, monstrous, maybe even right in all the wrong ways. He didn't scream. He didn't laugh. He just stared into the future and decided it needed explosives. Edmund Kemper, the co-ed killer. The man is 6'9", 280 pounds, voice like gravel in a graveyard, IQ of 145. And somehow what's most disturbing about Edmund Kemper is that he's polite. He killed 10 people, including his grandparents, his mother. And then he did what serial killers don't even do in movies because it's too depraved for fiction. He performed oral sex on his mother's severed head. He screamed at it. He talked to it. He used it like a twisted therapy puppet. But that's not even the horror of it. The horror is that he knows exactly what he is. When Kemper talks, it's not madness. It's clarity. It's academic. He describes his murders with the same tone you'd use to explain calculus or how to make risotto. Cold, calm, like evil in a lab coat. And here's the truly unbearable twist. The FBI learned from him. He sat with agents and helped them build criminal profiling. He told them how serial killers think, feel, manipulate. He shaped the foundations of behavioral science by dissecting his own disease. He was both the subject and the teacher, the blueprint and the bomb. Kemper is the monster that shakes your hand before devouring your soul. And he's still alive, still talking, still intelligent enough to make you forget he decapitated his mother and screamed into her esophagus. Israel Keyes, the devil's accountant. We don't talk about Israel Keyes enough. Maybe because the FBI still doesn't know how many people he killed, maybe because he didn't fit the narrative. No childhood trauma, no obvious signs, just a disciplined, calculating horror show in human form. Keyes didn't murder impulsively. He invested in it. He buried kill kits around the country buckets filled with guns, duct tape, and Drano. Then, years later, he'd fly out, dig them up, kill a stranger, vanish, and no one would ever connect the dots. He studied law enforcement patterns, avoided all victim profiles, changed weapons constantly, destroyed electronics, kept no souvenirs, no pattern, just pure predator logic. He was a serial killer who read true crime to find what not to do, a ghost with a planner. He only got caught because he got sloppy. Samantha Koenig. He abducted her from the coffee stand in Alaska, killed her. Then, and this is where your stomach turns to stone, he sewed her eyes open and propped up her corpse to fake a ransom photo. You read that right? He posed her dead body to look alive. Israel Keyes scares law enforcement. Not because he was the most brutal, but because he was methodical. There are killers, and then there are systems of death. He was the latter. And when he was finally caught, he killed himself in his cell before they could extract the full truth. He left behind a note. It wasn't a confession, it was a poem, a riddle, the kind that makes you feel like the devil learned haiku. Richard Kuklinski, the Iceman. He wasn't a hitman, he was the hitman. Over 100 kills, maybe more. Mob enforcer by day, father of 2 by night. And he did it all with the deadest eyes you've ever seen outside of hell's own morgue. Kuklinski didn't kill for thrills. He killed for money, for silence, for a twisted sense of reputation management. And what made him terrifying wasn't that he got away with it for decades. It's how absurdly normal he seemed while doing it. He'd poison your sandwich, shoot you in the head, shove you into a freezer for 6 years so nobody could tell when you died. Hence the nickname. He once tied a man between 2 trees and let rats eat him alive, just to test a theory. He watched with mild interest, like a scientist seeing if gravity still works. But here's the apex of the psychological hellhole. He loved animals, fed stray cats. He had a rule: never hurt kids, never kill women. Morals, he called them, morals. Like duct taping someone's face to a heater was okay, as long as they were a man. He described murder with the passion of a bored chef describing soup. I used cyanide. It's fast. That's it. No drama, no laughter, just void. The Iceman was proof that psychopathy isn't always flashy. Sometimes it wears a sweater. Sometimes it smiles while talking about severing spines with a pipe wrench. Sometimes it's your neighbor with the best Christmas lights on the block. Andrei Chikatilo, the butcher of Rostov. Have you ever tried to scream through your own teeth? Andrei Chikatilo did, but not from guilt, from frustration. Born in Stalin's famine-starved Ukraine, Chikatilo grew up in a collapsing world with more corpses than textbooks. His father was a POW. His brother was, allegedly, eaten by neighbors. And Chikatilo? He was impotent, bullied, and crushed by shame. But he didn't stay weak. He became a teacher, a husband, a man with a mask. And underneath that mask, there was something coiled and starving. He killed over 50 people, mostly children and teenagers, lured them into forests, stabbed them dozens of times, bit off body parts, mutilated them like he was trying to carve the trauma out of his own bones. But here's the demon's joke. His impotence wasn't just a cause, it was the core. He only achieved sexual satisfaction through killing, through watching the light flicker out in terrified eyes. And he almost got away with it. Soviet police were clueless. They didn't believe in serial killers because it was a Western disease. So they arrested the wrong men, killed some, and Chikatilo kept going, kept hunting, with state denial as his shield. He was finally caught when he returned to the scene of one of his murders, like a man revisiting a sacred altar. When interrogated, he ranted for hours, days. A volcano of guilt, rage, and perverse logic erupting from a man whose mind was shattered glass held together by wire. "And in court?" he screamed. "Bit the bars, stripped naked, barked like a dog." He wasn't a man. He was a scream in human form. Albert Fish, the Grey Man. This isn't just a murderer. This is a curse given flesh. Albert Fish was born in 1870, and somehow we're still not over it. He was a child rapist, a cannibal, a walking pit of nails and wires, a grandfather who cooked children into stews and sent letters to the parents describing the taste. Not exaggerating. He literally wrote to Grace Budd's mother to say, "She died a virgin. Then I roasted her." And his intelligence? It's what made it so much worse. He read Freud, quoted scripture, and wrapped his theology around his urges like a priest vomiting up broken prayers. He believed he was doing God's work cleansing innocence through pain. He inserted needles into his pelvis for penance. Over 24 were found in his body after death, rusting like metal roses. Fish wrote confessions that read like poetry scribbled in blood. In one letter, he calmly discussed boiling buttocks in a stew with carrots. Carrots, for God's sake. And in court? He defended himself with biblical fervor, claimed he was Abraham offering up Isaac, but society just didn't get it. The jury couldn't decide if he was insane or Satan's secretary. They found him guilty anyway. And when he was electrocuted, The needles in his body reportedly short-circuited the chair. Albert Fish is what happens when intelligence is infected by pain, wrapped in religion, and soaked in absolute rot. Not just a killer. An omen. Dr. Harold Shipman. The death prescription. Let's flip the script. What if your killer wore a white coat? Dr. Harold Shipman wasn't just clever. He was trusted, respected. He had the voice of calm, the hands of healing, and the soul of a ledger accountant, tallying souls like taxes. He was a general practitioner in England who, over 2 decades, murdered at least 218 patients. Maybe more. Probably more. Definitely more. But here's the horror. They asked for him, requested him, loved him. He didn't strangle or mutilate. He used diamorphine medical-grade heroin, gave it like a gift, like mercy. Signed death certificates himself, wrote fake wills, told families it was peaceful, natural, dignified. Like God made house calls. He preyed almost exclusively on elderly women, many of whom died quietly at home. Their trust wasn't just a weapon, it was his camouflage. And for years, nobody questioned it. Why would they? He was Dr. Shipman. He was safe. But like all rotten things pretending to be sacred, the cracks showed. A forged will, a patient dead minutes after an appointment. Records vanished. And finally, people began to whisper. He was convicted in 2000, the UK's most prolific serial killer. And in 2004, he hanged himself in prison with his bedsheets. A quiet end. Fitting, in the worst way. Harold Shipman wasn't just a monster. He was a system failure given a name. He didn't need to run, hide, or trick. He just smiled, wrote the dosage, and let the world thank him for the poison. Dennis Rader. Beat, bind, torture, kill. That was the brand. The mission statement. The joke no one was in on until it was too late. Dennis Rader didn't just kill, he presented. He was the PowerPoint demon of death. A husband, a church leader, a Cub Scout dad, and also the guy who tied an entire family up in 1974, watched them suffocate like puppets in slow motion, then went home and made a sandwich. He wrote letters to the police, called himself BTK, demanded credit like a rejected Batman villain. He wanted to be known, not feared, not hunted. Famous. You ever see a serial killer who thinks he's doing branding? Rader studied other killers like a grad student writing a thesis in blood. He used military knots, took trophies, watched coverage of his own crimes on TV like an artist waiting for reviews. He'd stop for years, then start again. Why? Because BTK was just busy. He had church meetings, dog shows, a family barbecue. He didn't stop because of guilt. He just had errands. His intelligence wasn't in violence, it was in normalcy. He hid in daylight, wrote procedural manuals for home inspections, arrested stray dogs. And yet, there were rules. Like an unhinged bureaucrat. He didn't rape. He wanted to. Instead, he strangled. Tied. Took pictures of himself in women's clothes, tied up in barns, pretending to be his own victim, his own fantasy. It wasn't about pleasure. It was control. Scripted agony. And then, he got cocky. In 2004, after 30 years of silence, he sent a floppy disk to the police. They found metadata. Microsoft Word. Registered to Dennis, from Christ Lutheran Church. Arrested. Interrogated. And what did he do? He confessed, like a teacher explaining a syllabus. Calm. Monotone. That one was a 7 out of 10. I used a different knot. He was grateful to be caught, because now he could talk, now he could monologue. Dennis Rader is not chaos. He is order gone septic. A mind obsessed with filing cabinets, checklists, and death as a ritualized hobby. He was never out of control. That's the worst part. He was in control the entire time. Thank you for watching the whole video. Don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe.